And so I think it's really important now to understand that the decision makers who are sitting on these buying committees, right? The oldest millennial has just turned, 46 or 47 years old. They are tech native, and I think the propensity of the low code, no code technologies that these people are considering is allowing them to get in front of these decisions at a much quicker pace than other generations. And so this is a question that we ask our audience year over year. How many team members are involved in the purchase process? We know that the buying committees are getting bigger, right? We've all talked about that. But it's interesting to see these stats year over year. The smallest of the buying committees are seeing a minus 17% change year over year, 23 going into 24. And sort of the medium-sized to large buying committees, 4 to 15 members, are seeing quite, I would argue to say, a significant increase, about 6+% each. And so when we think about what that means really, right, to us, this is buying committees that are plagued with uncertainty and risk aversion. No one on these committees wants to be the one holding the bag at the end of the day or single-handedly making that decision. And that's sort of the environment that we sellers as marketers are going into.
Yeah, it kind of also plays on, so there's the risk aversion side of things. So I don't want to make the final decision. I want it to be unanimous across a group. And so, that makes the groups a lot larger. Tech democratization, which we'll touch on in a second, is another core driver of that, which is about accessibility. So I think when we look at buying groups basically increasing, we've got to be even more intentional as to how to successfully engage the full buying team and to really think about how our marketing and our value propositions and the way that we position our business and products aligns to an increasing number of personas who will derive value from technology purchase in different ways, different functions, different departments. And this is really something to sort of think on as marketers and go-to-market teams is, how can we best account for this? So again, I'd be thinking, how well does your content align? How well have you architected and articulated your value propositions for these customers? And if you're only focusing on very senior level titles, 2 or 3 individuals, looking at the data that sort of sits in front of you on the slide, you're missing out on a significant proportion of the buying group. And that's something you really need to start sort of tackling. So this movement, yes, leads are still important in various shapes and forms, but multiple leads that come from actual groups themselves is certainly where the market's trying to go, and certainly how buyers are actually looking to buy.
And so this is a perfect segue to this slide, which I want to call out our friends at 6 Sense and thank them for lending us their research as well, which goes so well hand in hand.
Yeah, so I mean, this one talks to make things even more complex. So buying groups are getting larger, and their drivers are developing and sort of moving in a different direction. But everybody in the buying group basically does their homework. So the slide's in essence talking to interactions across different seniorities or job roles. And so it doesn't really matter if you're an individual contributor on an FTE basis, or you're brought in as a contractor, you're going to engage and interact. Or if you're a VP, you might be involved at different stages of the journey and brought in at different parts, but you're absolutely invested and you're seeking context and you're looking at things and saying, am I actually going to get value in return from this large technology purchase, which is important to consider. Next slide, please.
This is super important. I just want to stand here for a couple of seconds. I talk to marketers all the time who are sort of saying, well, I'm only interested in Manager Plus, or I'm only interested in Director Plus, or my ICP is XYZ, putting a very sort of tiny box around that. All the data is here showing that we really need to expand that box. We need to build a better tent, so to speak, because all of them, all of these titles are engaging with our content and are coming in to the decision journey at any given time. So we need to be ready for that.
So in market, things have certainly become easier in some ways, so to speak. So what I mean by that, it's easier to access and easier to understand technology these days. So for anyone unfamiliar with tech democratization, which is always a little bit of a mouthful, in essence, it means that technology has become more and more accessible to more and more people. So even those that come from non-technical backgrounds, so think finance or security, ops, wider business titles. And so from a buying group perspective, you can see that now more than ever, there are more people from more functions entering and exiting the buying group. And that is critical to not only understand that you need to be aware of which personas obviously form part of your groups. And you need to think about how to have again, I'll hammer home, value proposition at a brand and product level, that things are focused on different outcomes, that when it comes to your content, you need to be thinking your way smartly through how well you articulate that value to different individuals with different purchase drivers. So, as a marketer, if you're just focusing on a few leads, as we sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, you're missing out on a significant portion of the buying group. I read a really very interesting article this week, which I'll recommend to you guys. It was written by a guy called Michael Levy, and it talked a lot about surfacing demand units, which was a phrase used a few years ago by Serious Decisions. And what it kind of talks a lot about is not only identifying single leads, and that isn't the way to go. What you often find when you do engage single leads is sometimes they front up as gatekeepers. And so what we as marketers or even sales reps become is a little bit of what's called column fodder in the solution consulting world or consultative selling world, which is basically you engage with one individual who fronts up and they use you as leverage for their top rated vendor. So it's really important that when you engage accounts, leads, you look at things in aggregate. When there's a deal going through, something I'd certainly be banging hard on is the number of contacts associated to that opportunity. I know there's rules in various businesses, the more sophisticated businesses, where there needs to be at least 3 or 4 contacts per opportunity to progress through deal stages, and that talks a lot about the way in which obviously buyers are buying. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit more about buying cycles and buying journeys. So there's some really interesting research here from 6 Sense, and it's research that really paints a very vivid picture. So the first thing to sort of call out here when we look at buying processes is it's intense, right? On average, 10 individuals or persons or personas within a buying group, 64 touches per person through that whole journey. Where I get that number from is looking at 16 touches per vendor, right, per person. So me, Greg, I'm being interacted with 16 times, and then 4 times over. So 4 vendors are coming out to me. So I'm seeing 64 different interactions or available interaction points through my journey, which when you look at it from an overarching perspective at a vendor interaction rate, that's 640 interactions per journey, which is significant. And most of the time, and this is the really interesting part of it, the buyers aren't spending time with the vendors. It's spent actually before true vendor engagement. If you flick on Victoria, thank you. So this is where I suppose the research really sort of starts to become very handy. So Gartner, again, significant player, brilliant research. 15% of the buyer's journey is actually spent with vendors. So again, when you look at all of those interaction points and doing a little bit of maths, 640 interactions per journey leads to more than 4,000 interactions for a buying team through the entire buying cycle. So you can very easily see from some of the data and the research that it isn't easy to be a buyer today. And it's actually quite challenging to be a marketer, trying to account for the fact that buyers are buying in very different ways. On the buying side, we're risk averse, we're on the defensive, and we actually need a lot more confidence to follow through and actually make a sort of purchasing decision. Next one, please. Thank you. So you guys will know some of this research to a degree, right? Maybe not the 70%, but that buyers do their research far beyond when they actually start to talk to a seller. So we can see that it doesn't matter how long the journey was from the research. Answers consistently said that buyers are only really interacting 70% of the way through their journey. So when you look at that, that somewhat gives us, if we were just, to look at things from the 30%, a very small percentage against the larger journey, right? So this talks a lot to you from a marketer's perspective, the need to build brand and consideration, demand creation over a much longer period, and then to really lens on that final 30%. But when you look at that, if you were to run the example and say, okay, well, our sales cycle is 12 months long, 3.5 months is going to be engaging directly, but that still leaves 8.5 months prior to that where we have to build awareness and be in front of our buyers before they get to the point where they're like, hey, I'm ready to talk and have a conversation. And that same, it doesn't matter if your sales cycle is 3 months or 6 months or 2 years, the research came back with the same number, that buyers are engaging directly with businesses 70% of the way through their journey. Next one, please, Victoria. Again, another fantastic stat building on that 70%. Once they're there, it's actually the buyers themselves 83% of the time initiating contact, saying, hey, it's me, I'm really keen to have a discussion now, which is crazy. So yes, we may be emailing them. Yes, we may be hitting them up on LinkedIn. I'm lensing this to a selling perspective. Yes, we, maybe calling them. Yes, we're sending them paper airplanes and homing pigeons and whatever you can. It's actually them. It's the buyers that are then deciding to accept the call or to reply to us digitally. And it's because it's them sort of saying to us, tell you what, I'm ready. Finally, it sort of seems at some points, I'm ready to initiate contact and I'm ready to have a proper conversation with you. So 84% of the time, the vendors, this is a brilliant stat. Again, love the stats. So 84% of the time, the vendor that buyers reach out to first is the first one that they buy from. That is a crazy, crazy statistic. So again, this talks a lot. Marketers, ring the bells, do whatever you need to. This is very much hello brand to demand. I need to be building, awareness, regardless of reviews on demand creation. There's a lot of buzz on that in the market, or has been over the last few months. You need to be building brand and creating demand for a long, long period before the buyers are either put their hands up and say, I'm ready to talk to you. So this really completely reframes our job as marketers and as sellers. We need to become the one that they choose first. So we have to be right there, right? Otherwise, if you look at that stat, 16%. It's like, if you're late to the party, you're in the 16%, If there's 4 vendors involved, that gives you like a limited percentage. If you equally divide those amongst 3, it's tiny, right? So we've got to be front of mind. Um, when we measure our success on just getting leads and we're looking to win the deal in the sales cycle, we're actually setting ourselves up to lose. We know that there's multiple individuals involved. Instead, the view should really be we need to influence, educate, and really drive and build preference as cheapest guys. If you don't go with us, you're absolutely insane. This is when the buyer should be ready to call out to us. We should be building that demand and creation for a much longer period.